Hi, welcome back to Black Poets Then and Now. My name is Kara Roseborough, and today we're talking about poet, novelist, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde was born Audre Geraldine Lorde in 1934 in New York City, New York, to two Caribbean immigrants. Her father, Frederick Byron Lorde, was from Barbados. Her mother, Linda Gertrude Belmar Lorde, was from Grenada. She was the youngest of three. She had two older sisters, Phyllis and Helen. She grew up on her mother's stories of the West Indies and learned to read, speak, and write from a very young age. She wrote her first poem when she was in just 8th grade, although she often used poetry growing up as a means of expression. She found it difficult to communicate otherwise. She had a difficult relationship with her parents growing up. They both worked for a real estate company that they were trying to keep afloat after the Great Depression, and came off as very emotionally and physically distant for Lorde. Lorde attended and graduated from Hunter College High School in 1951. Hunter College High School was a secondary school for intellectually gifted students. While in high school, she published her first poem in 17 magazine after it was rejected from the school newspaper for its quote-unquote inappropriate content, queer culture content. While in high school, she also attended workshops for the Harlem Writers Guild, although she never really felt like she belonged due to her queer identity. In 1954, she studied at the National University of Mexico, where she further affirmed herself as a writer, a lesbian, and an overall activist and person. She returned to the United States and graduated from Hunter College in 1959. Lorde earned her Master of Science in Library Studies from Columbia University in 1961. While in graduate school, she worked as a public librarian in Mount Vernon, New York. In 1968, she published her first collection of poetry, The First Cities. That same year, she was a writer-in-residence at Tougaloo College in Mississippi, where she led workshops for young black writers. From 1972 to 1987, Lorde lived in Staten Island, where she wrote, taught, and co-founded Kitchen Table, Women of Color Press. In 1977, she became an associate for the Women's Institute for Freedom of the Press, which was dedicated to promoting women's-based media. In 1981, she became one of the founders of the Women's Coalition of St. Croix, which was dedicated to helping victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. In the late 1980s, Lorde helped to establish the Sisterhood in Support of Sisters in South Africa, which was dedicated to helping women affected by the apartheid and other injustices. In 1984, she began a visiting professorship at the Free University in Berlin at the invitation of Dagmar Schultz. The two met in Copenhagen in 1980 at the United Nations World Women's Conference. While in Berlin, Lorde became an influential figure in the Afro-German movement, actually coining the phrase Afro-German. While there, she was a mentor to such female artists as May Ayam, Ike Hugel-Marshall, and Helga Emd. Lorde wrote 18 books, which included works of poetry, prose, and collections of essays. Her poems had numerous themes reflecting on the multi-layered self, multiculturalism, her childhood, illness and disability, and probably more notably, her sexuality, civil rights issues, and black female identity. To this day, she is highly regarded for her criticism of feminism, particularly the lack of intersectionality within feminism in a constantly globalizing world. She wanted to acknowledge people's differences without homogenizing feminism, often feeling that women of color, queer women, and older women were left out of the conversation. In 1962, Lorde married white attorney Edwin Rollins, who was gay. The two had 2 children, and they divorced in 1970. After that, she had a brief relationship with painter and sculptor Mildred Thompson. From 1968 to 1989, she had a relationship with Francis Clayton, a psychology professor. The two remained friends even after their romantic relationship was over. Lorde's life partner was Dr. Gloria I. Joseph. In 1978, Lorde was diagnosed with breast cancer and had a mastectomy. 6 years later, she ended up being diagnosed with liver cancer. In 1992, at the age of 58, Lorde succumbed to the liver cancer while living in St. Croix with her partner, Gloria. Right before she died, she was part of an African naming ceremony where she took the name Gamba Adisa, which means warrior, she who makes her meaning known. I can think of no better name for this incredible outspoken artist and civil rights activist. Today, we look at her poem, Coal.
I is the total black being spoken from the earth's inside. There are many kinds of open, how a diamond comes into a knot of flame, how a sound comes into a word colored by who pays what for speaking. Some words are open, like a diamond on glass windows, singing out within the crash of passing sun. Then there are words like stapled wagers in a perforated book, buy and sign and tear apart. And come whatever wills all chances, the stub remains, an ill-pulled tooth with a jagged edge. Some words live in my throat, breeding like adders. Others no sun, seeking like gypsies over my tongue to explode through my lips like young sparrows bursting from shell. Some words bedevil me. Love is a word, another kind of open. As a diamond comes into a knot of flame, I am black because I come from the earth's inside. Take my word for jewel in your open light.
Let's unpack. This poem is a great example of the multi-layered self that Lorde often reflected on in her work. It also subtly, or maybe not so subtly, criticizes intersectionality or lack thereof in feminism. The poem speaks to the power of words, the different forms that words can take, and the influence they can have depending on the speaker, the context, and the privileges that speaker has. There are two forms of the self that are presented in this poem, coal and diamonds. So we have one image that seems more rustic, more of the earth, as is seen in the very first stanza of the poem, and then something that we would consider jewelry, something really pretty, but that is very much related to that first thing. Coal is a fuel source. It has been used to power just about everything in the modern world at one point. It has been a foundation and a backbone, fuel-wise, for our society. Diamonds are extracted from coal that has been exposed to several layers of atmospheric pressure. So the true self, the truest words, the real meaning, comes from this very natural thing that has been influenced by so many societal and environmental pressures. And that which emerges is something that we as a society often admire without really looking at where that beauty came from. And a lot of times, most of the time, all of the time, in the case of diamonds, that's coming from a lot of hard work, from a lot of pain. And if we look at this in the context of feminism, there are aspects of feminism that people go rah-rah for and are very excited to talk about, but it's ignoring all of the other work and all of the grueling efforts and oppression and racism and everything else that has gone into making that diamond. What does this say about words? Well, let's look at that first stanza, the bottom of the first stanza. We have how a diamond comes into a knot of flame, how a sound comes into a word colored by who pays what for speaking. So we have a comparison between diamonds and words, diamonds being extracted from coal, and then how they come into a knot of flame. They are yet again going to be molded, to be twisted, to be used as a means to an end by meeting a flame. Yeah? And typically this is a man-made thing, that, like, the earth is not suddenly catching fire after the appearance of diamonds to make, a necklace. Yeah? And then we have a sound, how a sound comes into a word colored by who pays what for speaking. A word, technically, should mean the same thing regardless, but it doesn't here, and Lorde acknowledges that by saying that the meaning of the word, the power and the influence of a word changes depending on not only the speaker, but the privilege of that speaker. Let's jump down to the second stanza. We have some words are open like a diamond on glass windows, singing out within the crash of passing sun. So a diamond on a glass window, it is see-through, the sun can shine through it, it can reflect off of it, it can make it beautiful. The diamond, makes different patterns and things of light on the wall and all that good stuff. So the words are seen and appreciated, they hold power and beauty. But then there are other kinds of words, like she says, moving on. Then there are words like stapled wagers in a perforated book, buy and sign and tear apart. So words taken out of context, possibly to be easier to digest. This and come whatever wills, all chances, the stub remains. So, even though we're taking these things, we're extracting these things, there's still that base that is still there. An ill-pulled tooth with a ragged edge. So we've extracted this thing, but not really in a neat fashion, and it's very easy to see that this is not the way that it should have been done. It's an ill-pulled tooth, not a clean cut or a clean sweep or whatever. It is something that will possibly leave infection, will cause greater problems because of the way it was extracted. She goes on to say, some words live in my throat, breeding like adders, which are a poisonous snake. So some words are literally staying stuck and creating a poison that would, technically kill somebody. Some words are harmful. So we have words that, shine bright and are beautiful and are easily seen. Words that are taken out of context and kind of gnarly and not really part of the whole picture. And then we have words that are poisonous, that live inside us. And she goes on to say, others no sun, seeking like gypsies over my tongue. So words that are trying to escape, that are constantly on the move. And then she finishes out the stanza, to explode through my lips like young sparrows bursting from shell. I think it's important that she uses the word in the imagery of sparrows, as birds are often a sign of freedom. And these words exploding through the mouth, seeking that freedom, seeking to be heard. It shows that urgency, desperation, the need to be heard. Some words bedevil me. So some words are constantly causing continual problems and pain. Let's look at that last stanza. Love is a word, another kind of open, as a diamond comes into a knot of flame. I am black because I come from the earth's inside. Take my word for jewel in your open light. So I, the self, going back to the very beginning, come from the earth. And the words are what is extracted after I have endured all of this pressure, all of the, environmental and societal and exterior influences. My word is the very thing. And my word should be a jewel. You take it just as is. You don't continue to extract and make it this ragged tooth, or, a tooth with ragged edges. You allow it to shine. You don't take it and distort it even more. You don't put it to the fire again. All of these things are great reflections on language and how it affects the true self and the reflections on the true self, and can be taken to be a reflection on the multi-layered self and womanhood and the individual within an intersectional feminist system that we're striving for. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It has been such a treat to talk about the great, magnificent Audre Lorde. I will see you next week for more poetry. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and stay creative. Bye!